Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. What's up, everybody? We lost first time in a month. What are you going to do? Right? We lost.
First time in a month, and for once, it finally feels like we can kind of criticize the team for mistakes in losing, not just stay like, hey, you got them. You tried really hard and you lost to a good team. This one feels like we got some legit criticisms coming out of this one.
But I will start with the, excuses. What kind of spot is that, guys? Look, I'm sorry, but it's just, I'm not sure whether they got the first down or not. But I do know the ball was not placed where it was supposed to be placed. And it should have been placed a yard further. And then they should have spotted it there and pulled the chains out. And then found out the old-fashioned way. Because where they did place it was definitively wrong. So I don't understand why they didn't put the ball back at the 41-yard line and then bring the chains out. And then if they're short, they're short. What are you going to do? Because it's imperfect. But the way that they left it where they left it, well, that wasn't right. That was clearly wrong. So I'm with you. I don't think that this is the one reason why they lost. However, I'm not sure they got that call right. It's a critical call to get wrong.
No, I agree. This one should have been the spot got changed, then bring out the chains, and then it still could have been short. That's how I feel like it really probably was going to play out. But to say oh, that was right, I was kind of like, I don't know about that one, Chief. He wasn't down, he wasn't touched, I guess, until his body was leaning back. Either way, it was very close, I understand, but that was not correct. I'm one of the people that is going to the play before. Noah Brown, who's been great for this team, had a ball hit him in the shoulder pad. That to me was actually the one where I was like, oh God, you catch that, they're in field goal range. There's a shot to win this thing. Bad call, but I don't think it was the end all be all of this matchup.
Right. And that's why I'm not going to dwell on it. It needs to be pointed out though, that I'm not sure that call was right. In fact, I know it was wrong. The question is how wrong, because I'm not sure he got there or not either, but I do know that they marked it wrong. So I don't know. So anyway, beyond that, let's get to the mistakes. This sucks because the game's over on a penalty. And I'm sitting there in the booth, everybody's yelling at the TV. They're trying to draw you offside. Don't jump. And I don't know whether they would have gone for it or not. We were arguing in the booth about it because I'm sitting there. It was 3 plays in a row where you do what they normally do. Let's run the ball 3 times, make them use all their timeouts. And I kept looking at London and yelling at Logan going, are they seriously have they watched our guy? They're seriously going to give our guy the ball back with a minute left? And all we need is a field goal? I don't think so, guys. So we'll never know. Would they have actually gone for it on 4th and 1, or were they going to take a penalty and punt because their punter had been fantastic the whole day? We don't know because we made a rookie mistake and never found out.
No, but we do know. Steelers reporter after the game, their center said there was no play call. There was no play call. They did not plan on snapping the ball.
But they could have called a timeout.
He said on that play, though.
And rethought, because they had timeouts. They could have called a timeout and said, are we punting or are we going for it? And I would have argued, I'm not giving that guy the ball back personally. I don't know how many times he did it yesterday at the end of the first half. I don't know how many times you have to see it before you realize he's one of those. I would never give him the ball. The whole time I'm like, these guys are seriously going to run the ball 3 times and give us the ball back? You got to be kidding. But thank you if that's what you're going to do. But we'll never really know. They might have called a timeout and might have gone for it. But it seems to have been leading towards a punt because the punter was great. He probably could have pinned them deep. We got scared to field the punts after a while because of 2 muffed ones. Zacchaeus ran away from him at that point. I actually talked to Tressway after the game about what he was doing and described a lot of way too technical punting things that I won't get into, and was, extremely appreciative of the way this guy plays the game and the ability he has to kind of knuckle it towards the receiver, which is what he blamed for the problems that Zacchaeus had, because the ball was moving like crazy when it came down at him. Anyway, so I don't know what they would have done, but regardless, to your point, it is the first time we can really talk about mistakes that were made that really led to a loss yesterday.
Yeah, it's not only mistakes, and I saw our friend Al Galdi tweet about this too. They're just starting to get beat up. Like the injuries are starting to pile up in a wrong way. And I point to a game like yesterday where you get a game against the Steelers where you get a physical team, right? Every play.
They're off a bye.
Yeah.
They're getting healthier.
Mm-hmm. And they're banging every single play. And that starts to wear on you. Like you have to wonder, was Johnny Newton just exhausted yesterday and had a mental lapse on the last play of the game? Like he's a rookie. This is the longest he's ever played, in a season now, right? Like this is all these college kids. This is longer than they're used to actually playing for. It all, like, to me yesterday, it all started to add up. And I think that's when you started seeing the mistakes happen of not only injuries, but also mentally. I think it's starting to get to them a little bit. I'm not going to have them tap out for the year, but it's starting to get to them a little bit.
This whole week, like coming into it, first of all, it was trending this way. Like, I didn't know if B-Rob was going to play. Suddenly the offensive line is really beat up. Jaden's still overcoming the rib injury. And I got to tell you, like, the season's catching up to him a little bit. I think you saw that yesterday. He was far less precise than he's been. I'll take his off day because that was his off day yesterday. And his off day is still pretty darn good. Okay. One like Jared Goff last night. That was ridiculous. I can't believe they won, but like, that was ridiculous. If this is his off day, I'll take this every single week. But it all added up to this team needs a bye really, really badly. And they don't get one. They got to turn around and play Philadelphia in a couple of days, who I think is relatively healthy and already did have their bye. And I'll to watch because I saw the end of their game. It doesn't matter. They're blowing them out. So I haven't seen a lot of them yet. So I'm going to deep dive them over the next couple of days. But I got a feeling they're in a better shape collectively from a health perspective than this team is. This is why yesterday was such a big deal. If they just could have stole that in some way, just got out of there with a win, I actually honestly wouldn't care if they lost on Thursday because they're going to play them again, right? Like after a bye. So I'm not, and it's at home, and that's where you have no excuses. It's a December game at home, division rival. You have to win that. It then will negate whatever happens on Thursday night. But because they lost by a point, because they didn't get this win, it's kind of hyper intensified to try to figure out how to do this. And I know the two after that, Dallas and Tennessee, look like wins at home. But to your point and what I'm seeing, this team needs a bye bad. The injuries are piling up fast. Suddenly those games aren't looking as easy as they did like a week ago. So we'll see. We're in survival mode. All of a sudden, kind of out of the blue, we've hit the point in the season in survival mode, and we actually hit the wrong teams to do it against.
No, exactly right. Like, I look at yesterday too, that the worst part about that Eagles-Cowboys game is they pulled Hurts in the fourth quarter, and your boy Pickett's playing in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, man, this sucks. And they didn't have to rely on Saquon. Saquon only had 16 carries or something like that. That one, like watching that piled on the loss for me yesterday. Cause I'm going, God, they don't even have to play a full game heading into Thursday, and they're the home team. We're traveling. I mean, I know it's only Philly, but still, you know how this all works. I had a bad feeling like going into that game. And then when I saw they were basically had it wrapped up by the fourth quarter, I have a worse feeling about it. And I'm with you. That Cowboys game, how many times in this rivalry have we had games where one team should have killed the other one and it ends up being way too close and too close for comfort, or it swings the other way? And then you look at the Titans too. The Titans are starting to come on a little bit. I'm not going to say anything crazy, but them going up against a beat up team here in Washington, if they don't get healthier, I know I'm not going to say it's spiraling, but all of a sudden the outlook has changed is what I'll get at.
Yeah. It's not who you play. It's when you play them. I would have loved to have played the Saints 2 weeks ago. We would have killed them.
Right.
But I don't know what they're going to be in a month. Like you don't like, are they going to be a playoff team? Absolutely not. Are they going to be way more competitive than they've been? Probably. Actually looks like it. Right. And then all of a sudden that's a road game and a tough place to play. Like, this is my point. Like, this week got hit really at the wrong time. Once the injuries started piling up and I knew B-Rob was going to be out again, I went, like, this is going to be bad. All right, let me go back to the original point was we do have some criticisms here. This is the third week in a row. Okay. Like there is a trend here. The first halves, they've been fantastic in general. They gave up some points yesterday, but one of them was a short field. It was like the rare occurrence where they actually gave a team a short field and gave up a touchdown off of it this year. But in the second half, this is 3 weeks in a row. Chicago was shut out in the first half, had a lead with 25 seconds left because they gave up 15 points in the second half. The Giants scored 2 late fourth quarter touchdowns to make that game closer than it probably seemed like it was going to be. And then yesterday, 2 late fourth quarter touchdowns, including a bomb towards the end of the game that really sealed and was one of the major. Again, this is a weird one because I think there's a million plays that could have gone either way that would have probably had something to do with the outcome. Still, the point is this, like, I love the way the defense is trending, but in the second halves over the last few weeks, there has been a trend of they become porous. And it happened again yesterday. They gave up another long drive that fortunately ended in a fumble at the 1. Like, Pittsburgh could have ended up with 21 points in the second half. That's not winning football. It is not.
No, exactly right. And I think this is a flip that I didn't expect either, because I thought Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. were very good at these adjustments heading into second halves for the first half of the season, or almost half of the season, first third of the season, I guess we'll call it. And now the last 3 weeks, it's kind of flipped the other way. The other teams have figured out how to flip it back on us. And that's a bad trend because, once again, the offense is getting beat up. I think yesterday, too, it was indicative of how we felt about some of these big games, right? Where you circle to the Bengals game, you circle to the Bears game. They had to have perfect games to win those ones. We talked about it right after. We weren't like sugarcoating those games. We said they had to have literal perfect games to win them. Well, we've had 2 weeks now or this last week where it wasn't perfect and they lost by a point. Like, this is what we're running into now. These perfect games aren't perfect, where they're making these mistakes and they're losing now. So
the good news is, though, the non-perfect games where Jaden isn't as precise as we're used to. He can't run the ball the way he was, whether that was Pittsburgh or him or a combination of both. Yep. We did have a bad turnover on a spot of the field where, if you have a bad turnover, we had really bad penalties on defense again in the first half on a drive that should have bare minimum ended up a 3-point drive instead of a 7-point drive because of a couple of defensive penalties. We had other penalties that extended. So we had a lot of things that needed to be cleaned up. They still lost by 1 to a 7-2 team. Yep. So you could look at this both ways. Like,
Agree.
This was far from anything close to winning football, in my opinion. And yet, in the end, had they gotten a better spot or not jumped offside, they might have won anyway. Maybe.
No, I agree. And I think these are the moments where I like to use the phrase zoom out. It's my favorite phrase for this season. When you zoom out on everything, if I told you that going into week 10, they were going to have the record they were going to have, and they were going to lose to the Steelers by 1 point because they made some mistakes. Like, I could tell you all the mistakes they made yesterday, and you'd say, oh, they should have lost 42-20. But they didn't. They lost by a point. And these are the times where I think perspective matters. You and me are not doing the whole sky is falling thing. I think some people, I think some people are.
Absolutely not.
But,
tough team. Yeah. This is a very tough, resilient team. All that stuff they talk about, the brother stuff, it shows in a game like this. They're pissed that they lost.
Yes.
They're pissed. And this is different than the Ravens games. I think the Ravens are a contender too. I thought the Ravens outplayed them. They lost by 7. But I remember I was so happy when Quinn said that was lopsided, because I went, score might have not have been, but the game was really. Jaden made some unbelievable plays. Their defense couldn't stop them. They gave up almost 500 yards. It was lopsided. This was, they gave up big plays. They had big mistakes. They played a good team. They lost to a good team, but they were right there. And I'm with you. Like, with all the injuries that were adding up, which I didn't like them yesterday because of all the injuries that were adding up. I know what Pittsburgh's defense is. And I'm like, we're missing our tackles. We're missing our best running back. I knew it was going to be a problem without Robinson this time, as opposed to the other times. I'm like, we're the underdog here walking in. And yet they were a break or two away from winning anyway. So I am not sky is falling at all. I'm disappointed, but I'm not sky is falling here at all.
No, 100%. I think I said this either on your show or I said it on my show when I had you on last Friday, was not having B-Rob concerned me because he's the tone setter. Like, he's the guy you look at where he's the one that starts the game off and gets everyone going physically and, knocks a couple of dudes out on that defense. And then in the second half, usually takes off a little bit. Not having that against that defense, I think, was a difference maker. Because I agree with you a little bit on the Ravens after thinking on it on a month. Would he have made a difference in that game? Probably not as much. But yesterday's the type of game where you go, he would have been probably the difference maker, and they lose by a point.
Yes, 100%. All right. All that said about the defense, I do not want them to rush Marshon Latimore back. I know everybody's freaking out because they saw the deep plays and everyone freaks out on St. Juice all the time. And I just don't think he's a number one corner, but he's being forced to be a number one corner on this team. And that's what's going to change soon. And everybody's looking at A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going, but we got to win this game, get him back on the field. The worst thing they could possibly do is if he's not ready, shove him back out there and potentially make it worse to the point where he doesn't play the rest of the season. What would be the point of acquiring him then? So this team's very careful. Andrew Wiley could have played yesterday. They chose not to let him play because they didn't feel just right and they wanted to hang. And this is what they've done with everybody. It's not in the greater good of the team to have him not play, but they decided it's in the greater good of him and maybe the future of the season to have him not play. I believe the same thing will be taking place with Latimore. I know everybody's freaking out today going, we have to win this if we want to win the division, and we need him to stop A.J. Brown. Otherwise, a long day. I agree with you. It's going to be very difficult if he doesn't play, but I am advocating, do not rush this guy back. We got him for a reason, for a stretch run. If they lose on Thursday, they're still 7-4 and they get to play them again. Like, everybody needs to remember that part of it.
No, I think this kicks back to my conversation like 2 or 3 weeks ago when they were I think they were like 6-2 or something, whatever the record was. And I think your and I's joke was they can go 500 the rest of the way and they'll win 11 games. Like, yes, we are firmly entrenched in that.
And look at some of the home games on that schedule to get to 500.
Right. And so I'm firmly in that category too. Once again, the phrase zoom out comes to mind here. Would I love for them to win the division? Yes. Duh. Absolutely. But at the same time, they are in such a good position to make it to the playoffs, period, that I think you need to be a little careful here too. I'm with you. I actually thought Latimore wasn't going to play on Sunday regardless, because I thought if he's good to go or still had some nagging injury, they would actually save him for Thursday. But because it seems like he is legitimately not ready to go, I'm with you. Give him basically a bye week ready to go, because I'd rather have him against those teams that we just talked about too. The Cowboys and the Titans. Lamb. Yeah, where you can lock him down, be more aggressive against a guy like Cooper Rush and Will Levis, if Levis is still playing at that point. I'm with you. Like, I think I said this too last week, where I said everyone needs to calm down if we come in next Friday and they've lost 2 in a row.
Correct.
Because they're still in a very good position. I think I was already starting to calm people down because it was such a real possibility of it happening.
They are. Let's see. I'll go back to the offensive line. They need the bye week really badly here. So Wiley, can he play Thursday if he didn't play yesterday? I think he could, but like, are they going to put him out there again? Going to be an interesting question. How much better is his shoulder going to be 2 days from now as opposed to what it was yesterday? I don't know. Lucas, he never practiced at all. I have a hard time buying that he's coming back, although that Coleman is their starter now. But still, I'd love to have that swing tackle backup. Biotish missed some time yesterday. He's been dealing with something. Allegretti's been fighting through things for the last week. The offensive line can't wait to get to Friday. And they get, I don't care win or lose, they're off till Wednesday, guys, because they need to sit down, get in an ice bath, do whatever they need to do, because we need them. And I'll give them a lot of credit. They are fighting through it. And that was a very difficult group that they were dealing with yesterday, but they are beat up and we are in survival mode. And that unit specifically is in survival mode right now.
No, I thought, just to bring this around, I don't know if you're going to bring it up today or not, but like hearing about Sam Cosmi stand up in the locker room yesterday after the game to remind everybody that, like, guys, this is still something special. This is still something going on. To just kind of remind everybody, like, times are tough right now. Hang in there. We'll be okay. Keep your composure. Not that he went that style, but that's essentially that's what I was kind of thinking when I read that this morning, that Cosmi was the one to stand up, who's not vocal, by the way, who doesn't usually do that type of stuff. And that's to bring it to the offensive line. I think that's him going, don't worry, we'll be all right. We just got to get through this kind of, bad lull at the moment.
You do not win every battle to win the war. And this is what we are this is survival mode. And it's just unfortunate that all this stuff piled up against really good teams. Sometimes you get lucky and it piles up against okay teams and you win anyway. And I think that's the other point of this. That's a really good team they played yesterday. Almost beat them anyway, despite all the things we're talking about. We already kind of mentioned this, but B-Rob was really missed. Like, the third game he's missed this year. I said after the Baltimore game, I actually don't think he would have made that much of a difference, because I think they went into it knowing they were going to have to throw the ball a lot. Now, would they have been better with him? Of course. But I don't think it made much of a difference. Last week when he didn't play, like, I actually think it stood out in a win. Sometimes you don't notice these things. Go look at their per rush average on the whole without him against the Giants, who are a bad rush defense. It was about a yard lower per carry. That doesn't sound like a big deal. Over the course of a game, it's an enormous deal. It gets you from 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7 to 2nd and 6. It's a totally different ball game when you have somebody like this, or when you have a lead. Would they have been able to finish differently against the Giants and not giving up the big plays late if B-Rob's getting the ball, as opposed to, like, Eckler's been fantastic the last couple of weeks. The other running backs, golf clap to what they've been able to do for this team. He's their best inside the tackle runner on a consistent basis. They need him back. And yesterday, I thought it was telling. It was by far not close. Their worst in totality rush game. And it was obvious that he was missed yesterday.
No, 100%. When we talk about perfect games, right, it's about the offense getting these longer drives to shorten the game up a little bit. It's not as good when he's not in there. And, like, you could look at the box score and go, oh, they still got 3 rushing touchdowns. They were all like 3 yards. Like, it wasn't.
They were all
like
1 yard runs.
Yeah, it wasn't anything crazy. He's the one. He's the glue of the offense.
I will tell you this: considering Washington has struggled in the red zone actually over the last 6 weeks. The fact that they scored as many times as they did, that was the best red zone defense in the NFL yesterday, that they scored multiple times on. So
they ran it on them. It wasn't like they had these crazy pass plays. So it's not indicative of how the actual run game was the entire drive. I'm with you. Like, this is the time where they need perfect drives to have a little bit more length, and they didn't have that with B-Rob.
They did not. All right, last thing, and I kind of mentioned this earlier too. This was Jaden's worst game. And he still didn't throw a pick. He still didn't fumble the ball. He looks a little beat up. Him rushing for 5 yards, I'm trying to figure out, was that the Steelers? Was that him not feeling himself? A combination of both? A little more indecisive than he's been, maybe because the front wasn't as solid and secure? I'm not sure, because he was off early in the game. He was a little more indecisive than he's been. He barely scrambled and ran the ball. Like, we're just not accustomed to seeing this. So, which is why I say we've been spoiled here. Like, this is his rookie season, and that's probably the worst game that he's had in totality. And still, in the end, it's good enough to almost win, and with a different spot might have. That's again, this is why the sky is not falling here. He's the least of my worries, and they handled him. Or maybe the conditions around him weren't right, but something was off with him yesterday that's been a little more off than in the past, and still off for him is never bad.
I think it was indicative on that last drive of what I saw from him, and it was that he was fine running, but I think the speed of that defensive line, they were actually pretty quick to, like, throw blocks off and then go after him a little bit, and I think that's why he was concerned, because I saw it on the last drive a little bit where he had some daylight, and I think it was Hayward that, like, got off a block real quick and stopped him, and he only got like a yard on it, right? Like, I think what he was doing was he kind of knew. You and I have talked about this. He hasn't done it since, like, the first month of the season, really, where his first 5 yards are faster than anyone I've ever seen.
Yes.
But I think yesterday the Steelers were very good at, like, I don't know, having 2 sets of eyes, essentially, of going, I'm going after him, but I also know the second he pulls that, I'm throwing this block off, and I'm going to try to at least stay in one spot. To me, it seemed like the Steelers were showing a little bit of, like, we're going to rush a couple yards up and then be somewhat patient to try to keep them there. That's what I was seeing.
I've been waiting for this, that the teams with the ends would just stop and control an edge, because he's killing people on the edge. Once he gets outside, he's gone.
Right.
So maybe the Steelers had that. Last thing just on them, they're very good. Like, they're legitimately good. I don't know that I buy Russ in the big games against Kansas City, Baltimore, etc. But across the board, their special teams are outstanding. They're difference making. Russ on big plays is very good. He's got the weapons to do it now, for sure. And they are as old school as it gets. They just want to run the ball. They're not trying to fool you. It's run, play, action, waggle right. That's it. They're not doing very much, but they're big, they're physical, and they're going to be a tough out. So I knew this going in, but now seeing them in person, do I buy them to be better than Kansas City or Baltimore to get to the Super Bowl? I'm not sure. Although if they play Baltimore in the playoffs, listen, that's a rivalry that could go either way. But they are, and if they say got behind against a team like Buffalo, could they come back? I'm not totally sure, but they're very dangerous, and they're going to be a very tough out this year for somebody.
That defense is the infinity gauntlet. Like, Tomlin is just getting infinity stones. You look at that defense, you're like, how did they get all of these, not just good players, but like all pro type players when you look at that defense from top to bottom? And so to bring of
those three teams that I said I'm not sure they can beat, I think their defense is better than theirs, and by miles, actually, against Baltimore or Buffalo, frankly.
Exactly. And then so I think you kick it back to Russ and you go, how good does Russ have to be? Like, Russ is actually going to take care of the ball. Like, they have a really good formula there. Like, it is the old school, we're going all in on defense. We have a solid quarterback. He's not going to turn the ball over. Like, that's where I think
physical.
They're
they get leads. They're going to run the ball on you. They're very physical. I mean, and their targets are all huge. Like, Williams is a big receiver. Their tight ends are enormous people. Like, they're very imposing team. They feel very old school, and I want to credit them because they're very good. They have a very, very, very good team. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show you ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Let's go around the league. First in Germany, Danny Dimes goes dumps in Dusseldorf. I'm tired this morning, so the headlines won't be as good as, or at least they won't be as funny to me as as they would be to anybody else. But like, I liked that, and I know they didn't play in Dusseldorf, so don't at me about it. But it's a D.
It's all right. I'll give you that one. Good effort. Good effort.
They stunk, and I saw most of it because they played in the morning before the game. Like, they were really terrible. And I know that Maris said they're going to keep Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, to which I would just say, why? Like, they're going to have a top 5 pick, which they want now because they want to replace Danny Dimes. They're going to have to call Dion and ask, is Shador allowed to come to New York? We're going to have to find out if he's allowed to come to New York.
Right. No, like, when he came out and said that, I was like, why are you even endorsing that? It's always the kiss of death too. Like I feel like every time
it's like, what's the point?
Every time a GM says that,
season play out. Like, we're not firing him in season. You could say that. Like, we're not firing anybody in season. You could say that. No,
but like, when you say it mid-season, I always feel like that's a death knell. Like, it's almost like, oh, okay, it doesn't matter what we do now. Like, come on, you and I know Daboll's a good coach, but also, do you want to make the same mistake that Chicago made where you keep your coach with the top 5 pick coming in? Like, come on now.
Do I think he's a good coach? Yes, but I keep saying that, and they keep having really terrible records. And honestly, like, the game against Pittsburgh, it was their mistakes that actually kept them from having a shot to win at the end. And they made a bunch of mistakes against us too. I don't know. Their record is what their record is. Like, and you could sit there and blame Dimes or injuries on the offensive line or whatever. Like, they seem to find excuses around him. He's running out of those excuses, honestly, if you ask me.
Hey, we said good coach, not a great coach. It's not like we're going crazy over here. We're not calling him Belichick. I think he's a good coach, not a great coach.
You done Eberflust up.
That actually sounds like a German headline. I'm just saying.
That's pretty good. Give me a credit for you done Eberflust up. The Bears, as predicted, they're a train wreck. They lose to a terrible team at home with, of course, chef's kiss, the 3rd overall pick at quarterback, to make them wonder even more, where did we go wrong here? They're done. And for all they were chirping so much 3 weeks ago, I do not want to hear from you until 2025. Y'all need to shut your pie holes because you guys are I didn't think it would get like this. I knew they made a mistake keeping Eberflus because whether he deserved it or not, it just wasn't timed up. They needed to bring in somebody to work with Caleb and start fresh, start anew, and they'd have a really good team. But they didn't. That's a mistake they made. Now they're going to have to fire him, find somebody else. You know how this goes. It just distorts the whole thing. Whoever takes over is going to take over a really good team with a really bad locker room. I mean, this is mwah. Good job, Chicago.
I couldn't love this more. And I'm actually friends with a couple of Packers fans, like Ben Raby, our friend here in DC. He's a Packers fan. And I've been not chirping, but saying like, man, are Chicago fans this bad? And he's like, oh yeah, they're always this bad. And I'm like, they always talk like this. And it's yes. And now I'm like, you deserve every bit of this.
Right.
Because even us Washington fans, I would say, I don't know, 2018, 19 is when we all just shut up and we were like, we know we suck, guys. Like, we're not going to talk any trash at this point. We just know what the score is. Bears fans thought everything was fixed this offseason. And I'm looking at them going, did you really think keeping your coach, over, with Caleb and not starting over and then making all these moves, did you think it was all really going to work out?
Here's the hard part. That roster's good.
Okay.
That's the hard, so for them to for us, I think we were restrained because I think we looked at the team and went, listen, we're optimistic it's better. This quarterback looks great in the summer. Everyone's saying he looks great. However, the whole team's turned upside down, and there are what we believe are clear vulnerabilities here. So we're not going to pretend that we think we're going to be a rocket ship. It's worked out that way. That's why for the first month, we're like, is this real? That's what we were saying. Is this real? The Bears walked into the season going, watch this, guys. You think the Lions were fun? They're done. And but if you look at their roster with the receivers they have, with the defense that they have, with the promise of the quarterback that they have, it's hard not to get overly excited. So I get that. It's just what you cannot account for, and this is the truth of what's happened to them, they clearly don't like each other. Now, why? I don't know. Is that the coach? Is that the quarterback? Is that just the team? I don't know, but they don't. They were more together with Fields as their quarterback, losing every week, than they are right now. And that's not to blame Caleb. My preface always with him is, I like him. I actually think he's going to be good. I hope they don't ruin him out there because that's where it's tracking right now. But clearly the chemistry there is so gone that they just need to regroup and start over for next year.
This one's twofold for me. It was more the Bears fans talked that way and then decided they wanted to get an you-know-what and say, Jaden hasn't played anybody. I'm sorry, buddy. You barely beat the Titans. You beat the Jags. You beat the Panthers. My bad for, actually flipping this back on you guys when you had 4 wins and they were all against terrible teams. That's where I land with their fans as well. It's like, we're saying, is this real? They're saying, oh, we're good now. And we're looking at that going, the 4 people that you have beat are not that good. So let's pump the brakes there. On the Caleb thing too. I don't know if you saw some of the videos from the sideline yesterday.
It's bad.
He's throwing his head up. He's rolling his eyes.
The end of the game when he took a hit late when it was unnecessary and it's the Patriots guy picking him up and not his teammates is always a surefire sign of what is wrong with you guys.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It was pretty bad. And the other thing, remember before the Bears game, we're like, we're the secure ones here. We know what we got. You're the ones chirping, trying to convince yourselves that you have a better player. If you do, you do. We don't care. We know what we have in our guy.
That's right.
Let's see. Not a surprise here. Bills were chalk versus the Flacoats. That's not a surprise. The magic is not happening again with Indianapolis. Their defense isn't good enough. Lost in the Flacco turned Cleveland around that was a top 5 defense he was playing with and really good skill position players, even after Chubb got hurt. That's not the case with this team. They have what I would describe as an average NFL roster, and it's some places weak. So he's not going to elevate them in the same way. Shocker, they lose to a good team. Not surprised.
I will say this, at least, I think everyone in the NFL has kind of landed on Richardson's got to play, at some point
100%.
Before the season. What I will say is this, they're kind of protecting him a little bit. Had he played against the Bills yesterday, that could have been really bad with him. So they're actually playing that game a little bit. I think of let's protect him against some of these elite opponents. Sure. And I'm actually okay with this. I
bet within a month he's playing again, just because it's the right thing to do.
Agree.
Yeah. Kansas City's got a rabbit's foot this year. They're lucky. They could have lost that opener if Isaiah Likely's toe is inbounds. They could have lost to Atlanta. They could have lost to the Raiders a few weeks ago. They should have lost yesterday at home. This is unbelievable. Really good teams have really good things happen to them. And clearly, considering who they are, I'm not discounting that they're a really good team. But they shouldn't be undefeated at this point. And it's I don't know when that luck's going to run out, but it's going to. They're not going to go undefeated. They're going to lose, but they are who they are. So they're going to be a 1 seed now because of all of this.
I have a terrible feeling about this for Detroit fans. Like, they're finally going to make it to the Super Bowl, and they're going to play this version of Kansas City that just gets the breaks. Like, they're not nearly as good as they've been the past 2 years, yet they're getting these breaks, and it's going to be the franchise that has been waiting their entire lives to get there, to go against the team going for a three-peat that, sold their soul to get all the breaks to go this way. I just have a bad feeling when it comes to February. That's all I'm going to say.
I told you to pass on the Falcones. I told you. They changed their coach. It's a division game. Their rival on the road. You don't know. Logic was Atlanta would win, but you don't know. It's going to be breath of fresh air. These are NFL teams. It's in the Superdome. I'm not surprised at all. It doesn't mean New Orleans is good and Atlanta's bad. I've just seen this too many times. That's why I said this is an all-time pass. Don't touch this. You don't know what New Orleans is until you see them play for this interim coach. And it may last a little bit like it did with the Raiders a few years ago, and it may not. But it's a jolt of energy, and that's the problem here. And Atlanta ran into they needed New Orleans to keep Dennis Allen one more week, and they would have won yesterday.
This is where you have to look at certain situations, and different firings matter, right? This is when the Saints ownership came out and said, yes, and basically said, I was getting the vibe from the players the week before that they did not like playing for this coach anymore. So when you switch up the coach, they're all happy to come into work for a week. Like, yes, it's a different kind of firing if somebody's underperforming and the players liked him, right? Like, that's a different kind of season going off the rails. This is one where we all should have circled, oh, they just didn't like the head coach. Special teams coach comes in, and you know this. Special teams coaches are usually loved by so many of the players because it's a special kind of unit.
They're very energetic. They're nutsos.
Yes, exactly.
There's traditionally nutty people. Yes.
It's this shot of adrenaline. Is the special teams coach becoming the head coach?
Here's the good news from yesterday. Underrated, and don't and at me in a month when this matters. The Bucs losing was a big deal.
Yep.
Like, that was a win-win either way. Either one of them losing was going to be a big deal for Washington as they, ascend towards hopefully a division title, but maybe a wild card. We lost to them. We need them to keep losing. I don't think if they can keep their wits about themselves, I don't think it's going to continue because I think they're a really good team. They keep losing these close games to good teams. That's a big deal that they lost. And if they go south because of what their record is, like, they could have, would have, should have beat the 49ers and the Chiefs in back-to-back weeks, but didn't beat either one of them. This is good for the Commanders if the Buccaneers are not a factor late for the playoffs.
This is starting to break their way in terms of teams that we were worried about at the beginning of the regular season. We were worried about the Bucs and the Falcons in that division,
100%.
Right? So all of a sudden, the Falcons, they lost, but we still think they're going to win that division. Bucs are starting to fall apart, which we need them to kind of go off the rails now.
Yeah, the Falcons States doesn't matter because the Falcons are going to win that division, so it doesn't matter. For the purpose of what we're talking about, it doesn't matter. But the Buccaneers now, they're not going to win that division, so they matter to us.
No, and what I'm getting at is it's the wild cards breaking. We were worried about every NFC North team heading into this season. The Bears have now fallen off, and we're only having to worry about 2 extra wild card teams there. Things are starting to break a little bit when it comes to the standings here. That is good. The Bucs are a part of that as well. Now, hopefully, things are bad enough that they don't get tied and they have the tiebreaker, essentially.
Let's see. I'm not going to spend any time on this. Vikings and Chargers get by weak AFC South teams. Both were chalk. The Vikings one is probably not awe-inspiring, but they did win. That's what matters. They did win. What do you think your boy Raj is going to tell McAfee this week? LOL.
Once again.
This is another one. I called it on Friday. I went, I don't trust them at all. Arizona's actually been very competitive. Like, this screamed that they were going to beat them, even though one team has a way better roster than the other.
No, this one, once again, Arizona's a coin flip. So I'm cautious of picking them every week, but I thought, why are the Jets 1.5-point road favorites? They've been bad all year. The Cardinals have shown they've been able to put up some points, and it was over by the fourth quarter. Red zone was the worst day to have it yesterday in the 4:00 window. They were a part of it.
Yeah. Cardinals, the win in Arizona may end up being a big deal for the Commanders when we get down to the playoffs. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, I don't have a lot of time, and I do want to talk about the Spirit for a moment, but I do have to get to the two big NFL games of the 4 o'clock window that matter really for us. And I'm going to spend a lot more time later this week talking about that. But the bus has runneth over Mike McCarthy big time. Jerry Jones ran him over. Micah Parsons ran him over in the locker room yesterday after they got blown out again at home. Everybody's looking for someone to blame. I will be the one to say, and I said this in the summer because this was lining up. Remember, McCarthy said something about the front office in the summer about what they did. And I said, here we go. Everybody is staking their claim at who's going to be at fault when this goes sideways. And it does, and it did, and it will continue to. And I'll be the first to tell you, I actually don't blame him. I blame the front office, what they did, and he's going to get fired, obviously. I told you on Friday, I go, I've already heard from people that this is like a Ron deal. It's already a done deal, and everybody knows it. And I hope that they get no energy before this game in a week or two with us so that we can get a win against them because we need it bad. But the bus is running him over big time right now.
Yeah, and once again, too, I will say this without Parsons, without what he said in the locker room, he was a beast yesterday, too. Like, that was a game where he was trying to flip that game by himself, and he almost did. Diggs also played really well, too. I don't blame their players for going after him. My favorite stat, last 5 home games for the Cowboys, they've lost, right? Point differential, -110. -110. That is ridiculous.
Remember last year they won every home game by a million?
-110. 110 points is ridiculous. I'm with you. He was probably already fired. I don't think it's all his fault, but this is just spiraling in a way that, I don't know, I'm not surprised at. They waited too long to pay their guys. They didn't add enough at the deadline. Ezekiel Elliott is still playing, and he fumbled yesterday. Like, what is going on? They're not making the basic decisions anymore. They're flipped. They're done.
And the last one was this. The Lions are officially the team to beat now. Maybe the Chiefs are because they're undefeated, but the Chiefs keep getting lucky. The Lions, how in the world on the road against a good team that you're down 16 at half and you throw 5 interceptions, 2 in the second half and still win? They're the team to beat. Because if that's going to happen, then, and Collinsworth said this in the middle of the game, he goes, this game is good either way for them, because when you have an adverse situation against a good team in the playoffs, are you going to be able to respond? And if they get to or win the Super Bowl, they're going to look back at this one and go, this is the one where we knew there was literally nothing that could happen that could stop us.
No, I've told you this now for 2 or 3 weeks. I think the Texans are, I don't think they're a bad team, but I don't think they're as good as everyone is hyping them to be. And
this will be interesting to see how they respond to this, because that's a terrible loss.
Agree. And look, like I used the phrase for the last couple of weeks here with the Lions, they play with their food. Well, they didn't play with their food yesterday. They threw up all over themselves and they still beat you. Like, I'm feeling bad if I'm a Houston fan or a Houston, member of that team today, because that's a team that screwed up a bunch of times. You should have easily beat them if you were contenders, and you did not. And once again, Stroud is not looking as good as he did last year. It's a concern at this point. Like, I'm not saying sky is falling, but they are not as good as everyone hyped him up to be.
Listen, he was great in the first half, but he's really up and down this year. His numbers can be off. He threw a couple of picks. One was a really late throw yesterday. It still doesn't excuse losing that way. At home, up 16, 5 interceptions. Like they showed some stat, that was like first time since 1970 under those metrics that anyone's lost a game like that, because it's practically impossible to win like that. This shows you the resolve of the one team and the resolve of the other. They're not serious. They're probably going to win that division. They're like Atlanta. They're probably going to get in the playoffs, and they're going to get run by somebody.
Yeah, agree.
They may not recover from this. Like, they're going to be weird the rest of the year. Like, this is the type of loss. The Hail Mary loss to Chicago finished them. This is the type of loss you're going to find out what they're about, because if they don't bounce back from this, I will not be surprised. It's a terrible loss. The
one rare thing I will say is this: they're going to mess around and still get a home playoff game for winning that division.
Correct.
So you could flip it around very, very fast. So that's their one benefit of all of that.
All right. How about the late game magic for the Spirit? So they get a semifinal matchup against Gotham. It's going to be a very good match Saturday. Because the Commanders are playing Thursday, I get to call it. So I'm pumped to be back in the booth. Boy, they made it close. And you told me, you were texting me going, Bay FC was celebrating a little too long when they scored that 83rd minute goal when they thought basically they'd won on it.
I will say this. I know you're going to watch the game tonight, but the game was very back and forth. I thought the Spirit were slightly better for the first, 80 minutes or whatever we want to call it. It was very back and forth, a very physical game too. No shock there. If you watch the NWSL, you and me have been trying to tell people this all year. They let them play, right? And they let them play yesterday. And they score in the 83rd minute. And I'm telling you, man, I try not to be like old man or try to get irked because I'm rooting for the home team. They celebrated a long time. The entire Spirit 11 was ready to go at center field, ready for the ball. And I'm telling you, they must have stood there for 20 to 30 seconds while Bay FC was celebrating in the corner. Well, 3 minutes later, Tara Mickione, who you've watched all year, switched to defense this season, hasn't scored all year, decided to just take one for herself. They score 3 minutes later. So karma came back right away to take on Bay FC. And then how do they lose? Bay FC scores an own goal that gets credited to Lacey Santos in the extra time. It was chef's kiss because I haven't seen a moment like that all year with this team where I was kind of like, what are you guys doing? Like, why are you celebrating like that? And it was great. And I just want to say this too. That Audi Field crowd, by the way, saw a lot of Commanders jerseys at the crowd yesterday too. Good. But that Audi Field crowd was unreal. I've never seen that place go as crazy as they did when they tied the game at the 86th minute. It was an unreal atmosphere, so I can't wait for next week. Buy your tickets. It's on Saturday.
Yeah, it was sold out yesterday. I was psyched to see that. Up against a Commanders game, they got 20,000 people there. Yep. That's really, really, really great. I'm really pumped to do the semifinals. And if they win, they would play in Kansas City's stadium for the championship. But this is a really tough one. Old friend Rose Lavelle is a stud star for Gotham. They are really good. The one travel game we did was we went up to go see them play Gotham up at the Red Bull Stadium. And I walked out of there going, that's a really good win because that's a really good team. So I'm not surprised that the two are playing each other here. It'll be a good one. All right, last thing real quick. The slot machine continues to pay out. The Capitals, what a start offensively. The only team that's scoring more goals per game is Winnipeg. They're the only one. They're second now in goals in the East, goals scored, and they're 3 behind the team who's played 4 more games than them. So they're the highest scoring team in the Eastern Conference right now.
No, this offense is clicking. The power play is not. They did score the other night on the power play, but this is what's really scary about this Caps team.
The power play isn't clicking, but they're scoring like 6 goals a game. That's crazy.
And so that's where I'm landing now. It's like they're not even clicking on all full cylinders, guy. Like they still have another level to get here. I want to shout out one thing. I've told you so far this season, the goaltending hasn't been anything crazy. Logan Thompson has had the best start in franchise history for a goalie. He's won his first 7 games. I know they've scored a bunch of goals, but hey, we saw it last year where you got to make the saves to get some wins. He's done that so far, so shout out to him. I think there's a slight edge to Thompson over Lindgren right now to start the season off. And I'd be remiss not to mention this. Alex Ovechkin looks like his old self again, which is actually the most shocking thing I think of the entire season right now. He's already up to double-digit goals. Remember, he didn't have double-digit goals at the All-Star break last year. It's unreal with this guy. He's going to break the record this season. Maybe. John has already started to mention on the air, ESPN, NHL media, start figuring out when you got to travel, in 2025, because he's going to do it this season. He looks unreal. That's really like the craziest storyline of the year to me, is that Ovechkin looks like his old self again.
Yeah, that's wild. What a great start to the season for them. All right, see y'all tomorrow. Brad Buster Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital.